Hi there, this is Elise Benin, your marketing mentor. And this is the podcast for you if and only if you are ready to leave the feast or famine syndrome behind, and I mean for good. To kick off the new year, I'm talking to one of my favorite clients, Florian Schleicher, a European marketing strategist who has been in business just 4 years and is already, as we say, crushing it. So if you want to know how, listen and learn, and be sure to listen all the way to the end when we share a peek into what we're doing for 2026. Hello, Florian. Welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, Liz. So good to be back here.
Right? It was 2 years ago, kind of almost exactly. It was November of 2023, where we did our first podcast episode. And so let's see how far you've come and hear about what you've been doing. But first, as usual, please introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Florian. I'm a marketing strategist. My heart beats for sustainability. And I've been working in marketing for the past 17 years. Big corporations like McDonald's, NGOs like Greenpeace. I was head of marketing at a startup. And 4 years ago, I started my own business. And now I do consulting and strategies for corporates.
Okay, so let's just focus on your elevator pitch there for a second. You just said, so now I do strategies for corporates. Is that what you said? Mm-hmm. And you've been in business 4 years. I'm sure I asked you this on the first one, but let's ask you again. Why did you start your own business? What prompted you to do that?
Yeah, so I think for me, it was a moment when I was working at an agency. It was my first job. And I met a freelancer that was working for the agency. And I was just so struck by his approach to work. He has built his own business. And I kind of wanted to start my own business back then, but I was still rather young, had not enough gray hair. And so I decided it was not the right time, but I always had this in the back of my head. And then when I finished my last job at Too Good To Go, an app against food waste, where I was the head of marketing, I felt this is the best time to get started right now. We built an amazing brand awareness here in our market in Austria, in Vienna, where I'm based. And every 10th person had downloaded the app. We won a couple of marketing awards also. So I felt like there was a lot of good traction happening, which enabled me to also have a good start with my business. And what I like the most about it and what the fascination has always been for me is to choose the clients that I work with, to choose the people that I work with, and to have the freedom to just follow my passions on whatever projects I want to create and not be bound by any corporate structures anymore.
And that is the dream, that gets sold out there to a lot of people who want to be on their own or freelancing. But very few people, to my knowledge and from my perspective, and I've been doing this for almost 40 years, very few people actually achieve that. And it seems like, you tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you have in 4 years managed to achieve that?
I think so, yes. And I also get this from a lot of other freelancers or entrepreneurs that it's very hard. And don't get me wrong, it is hard. It is a lot of hard work. You have to get up every day and try to be a little bit better than yesterday. And you have to have a vision of where you want to take this. And sometimes it's just also a lot of luck when you meet the right person at the right time. Like I met a client of mine that I worked with at McDonald's, actually. Previous job. She then moved on to another company. I moved on. Now I am self-employed. And I met her actually at a playground again a year ago.
Mm.
which was just luck. And we met there, and she was like, "Oh, I've heard all the things that you're doing, and I actually am thinking about a project right now. Shall we do something together?" So maybe
Yeah.
this also would have happened another way, but it was just luck being at the right time,
Yeah.
at the right space. And yes, hard work it is. Of course, also network, like
Right.
having worked in that field for a long time, having met some amazing people, and that also helps me a lot right now to approach these people, to staying in touch with them. But yes, it feels like a good point, and I always appreciate when I talk with other people about this, that it also reminds me of that I built this and that it works.
Yeah. And so let's talk a little bit first then about the evolution over the 4 years. And I know you have a milestone for each year that I'm hoping we can hear about as well. But you didn't start out focusing on this corporate market, right?
Yes, no. So at the beginning, like I told you, I was fresh off of Too Good to Go, which is a startup, and I thought I want to work with startups also because like that was the most recent touch point for me. So I reached out to many startups. They knew who I was. They knew the brand. They wanted to get something similar for their brand going, the marketing engine. So I focused a lot on startups and also solopreneurs at the beginning. In my first year, what I did then, and this was my first milestone, it was the summer of 2022, I think. And what I did is I started writing a newsletter. Not because I thought that this would be an amazing tool in a couple of years to actually acquire business, but the need that I actually had was I was not sold out. I had a lot of time still. It was my first year.
Mhm.
So I wanted to keep myself busy, and I always enjoyed writing. So I thought maybe I'll just start writing a newsletter. Now I just checked today, and it's 1,800 readers
Mhm.
from Bangkok to Amsterdam and Vancouver. So it's really gone international. It's mostly marketing people reading it. And now, 3 years later, it actually helps me to acquire new business. So that
Mm.
was the first year. Then in the second year, I realized beginning of the second year was still good. And then it kind of went down, and I felt kind of an existential fear, like I think many entrepreneurs and freelancers feel. And what you always said is, say this, from feast to famine was really the thing that I also experienced. There were times with a lot of work, and then I crashed, and then nothing went anymore. And then I thought, okay, there are two options right now. Option number one is I try to keep the money that I've made as close as possible, and just try to get through it. And the second was to invest my money into learning something. And I was listening to a lot of podcasts back then. And I think it was the podcast from Jenny Blake,
Yep.
where I listened also to an interview she did with you. And I thought, a marketing mentor, I feel like that's the thing that I'm looking for
Mm.
right now. I reached out to you, and that was the highlight of my second year, is having a couple of sessions with you together, getting an outside perspective, um, being challenged, getting some new ideas. Like, for example, you pushed me to do a podcast, which
Mhm.
I now have, I think, like 40, 50 episodes, and which has also become a driver for my business. So yes, that was my second year. And then in the third year, I felt like the basis is working. I have a mix of corporates and startups and solopreneurs, which enabled me to feel rather relaxed. I had no feast and famine anymore, but it felt like really a balanced approach. And I still thought, okay, so what can I do to reach the next stage? And in my third year, what I did is I went on a solo offsite. I went to Norway for a week just by myself with, I think, 40 questions that I asked myself
Wow.
each evening at dinner about my business, and really thought about, so where do I want to take this? And what I figured out is I want to focus more on corporates, because there are lots of interesting challenges there. It's also easier once you're in, of course, with a corporate. You can work with several departments. The challenges are also more different than when you work with startups and entrepreneurs. And I really felt like this is where I want to go. And what I enjoy most is doing workshops. And yes, that's my third year. I changed the focus to fully commit on working with corporates, which also made my communications easier, because I didn't have to communicate to 3 different target audiences, but just focus on one. And now I'm in my 4th year. The thing that I did this year that was my highlight kind of was writing my first marketing trend report about a topic that has followed me for the last couple of months. And it has been read over 3,000 times now by a lot of leaders in marketing and communications, and has also become a source of people reaching out to me and wanting to get my perspectives. And yeah, so I'm very happy of how it all evolved. And would I change things if I would do it all over again? Yes, of course, but that is always in hindsight. And it just felt to me at every of these points like this is the right decision to take. And yeah, it worked out.
So that's all awesome. And I mean, I think I said this in the first podcast also. You're one of these clients who, when we first met, I just gave you a little bit of direction and you took the ball and ran with it, which is unusual, but I love it. So, because, marketing works when you do it and you are really doing it because you understand also how it works. But I want to dig in a little bit to some of the tools that you're describing there. But first, I know a lot of people have questions about either shifting or narrowing their market. And so when you decided to focus on what you're calling corporates, I would like to hear, how exactly did you shift that focus? What did you stop doing? You said it was easier to message to 1 than to 3. Like, how did that shift manifest specifically?
So let's look at my channels. In a newsletter, I had a lot of content that was focused on these 3 audiences. I had very simple things that solopreneurs could use in their marketing. I had advice for startups. And then I sometimes occasionally also had advice on a more strategic level that is suitable for corporates. So what I did there is I just skipped all the freelancing, all the entrepreneurial stuff in there and focused really on what would a chief marketing officer, what would a head of marketing be looking for in a newsletter. And I've, of course, lost some readers by shifting that, but it also helped me to really narrow it down to my audience. Another thing that I did is I stopped going to events where I knew that my now target audience will not be present because it didn't benefit me. I was also invited from time to time to speak at startup events. And I also skipped that, even though it brought me a little bit of money as a speaking fee. But I knew this is not helping the business that I want to create. So I looked at all the touch points. I looked at my website, the stuff that I write there. I looked at what I write on LinkedIn. I looked at whom I actually reach out to. And by looking at all these touch points, I reevaluate, okay, will this help me to build a track record more with corporates or not? And by doing that, I actually achieved the thing. And this is still a journey. Like I know I still would like to have 2-3 more corporate clients, but I set at the beginning of this year of 2025, the goal to have a couple of new corporate clients. So I always structure my goals in 3 levels. Level number 1 is a small success. And I said, small success is 1 new corporate client. Then I said, medium success would be 2 new corporate clients, and epic success would be 3 new corporate clients. And looking at it now, in almost the end of the year, what I see is that I managed to acquire 3 new corporate clients.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a full success for me. And which is also very satisfying that when you set out to do something, you do the hard work, as I mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
you change all these things, and then you see, okay, it actually works.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's a part of me now that wants to ask, what are your 3 goals or 3 levels of goals for 2026? Do you know yet?
I don't know yet. So I always write 3 goals, and each of them has those 3 levels. And my first goal was this corporate success, as I called it. Second was something that I called financial relief, which it was very much focused on not having to think that much about money all the time, building a more robust buffer, building a more consistent stream of monthly income. And then the third goal for me was a very qualitative, which was finding and spending time with people that live the lifestyle that I want to have and that can help me to grow and get inspired and be challenged.
Nice. I love that. I want to borrow it.
Because I really feel like the more you surround yourself with people that are on the same level or
Yeah.
slightly above in an area that you want to grow, the more you will. And I've met some amazing new people that really inspired me a lot and that were there for me also in this year. And for that, I'm deeply thankful.
Mm-hmm. I love that, especially the people part, because when it comes to freedom, I mean, yes, financial freedom is important and helpful, but
Mm.
the freedom to spend time, which is really all we've got, with the people who are going to help us grow and who I like to say bring out the best in me, that to me is the ultimate freedom.
And that's also not easy, because what I saw over the last 4 years is that with some people that I started this journey with, we're not on the same level anymore.
Mm.
Um,
You're
maybe
talking about clients or colleagues?
in terms of where our businesses are, and I always like to call myself an entrepreneur and not a freelancer,
Mm-hmm.
because for me, an entrepreneur is someone who builds a business, whereas a freelancer is just working from project to project.
Mm.
And this, for some people, they are still freelancers, and I don't get as much out of meeting with them anymore. And that's the hard part, and also saying no to some people, because you can't just let new people in your life all the time and keep the old ones. And that's tough part also,
Mm-hmm.
to restructure all of that. But I'm a big believer that, and I always also tell this to my clients whenever they want to start something new, is what are you willing to let go of? Because you can't just add and add and add. You also need to let go of some things.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now I have 2 thoughts. One is about, you mentioned a little while ago when you shifted the focus of your content. And one of the things I want to talk about is your content marketing, because you do a lot of awesome content marketing.
Thank
But
you.
when you shifted the focus, you made it more, or I guess got rid of the things that weren't under the category of what corporate marketing leaders need to hear or want to know. And so that made me want to ask, well, what do they need to hear and want to know?
So I feel like the first thing that we need to understand about these people is that they have super busy lives. They are at the top of their career so far. They get thousands of emails. They get a lot of outreach from freelancers, from entrepreneurs, from companies that want to work with them. And I always try to add value to their work. So I don't reach out to someone saying, hey, do you want to work on this project? Or here's an awesome thing that I created, and don't you also want to have that? But really to give them tools, questions, thoughts that I would also liked to have gotten when I was a marketing leader back at the previous jobs. So that is number one, always adding value. The second thing is building long-term relationships, because I deeply believe it's still a people's business, and I'm under no illusion that I'm the best strategist or best marketing strategist available. But the people that work with me want to work with me. So I also need to show them who is Florian in a way. So I have kind of two content categories. One is the educational and inspiring part. This is where I write my deep dives, where I provide frameworks, where I showcase some of the work. And then the second part is more of an entertainment category. And this is where I write about how do I actually approach my work? What are some highlights? What doesn't work for me? What is frustrating for me? Because that then gives an emotional layer to all of it. And it shows that I'm a human being. And some leaders might not enjoy what I write there, but others are more drawn to it then because they feel, okay, this is actually a nice person to work with. And I feel like we have a connection there. And from that, then building a relationship, meeting those people, and just talking about stuff. And now, and that's the challenge, I think, if you have your own business in a consulting or service-based business, you have to have the endurance to run a marathon. Because some of the clients that I work with now, I started to first have contact with 2 years ago. And you show up, you build a relationship with them, and at one point, as you like to say in our sessions, was they have marinated enough in the content that I provide that they say, okay, now I'm ready. I want to work with you. But that requires a lot of trust. And for that, I think this entertainment part, that is the more social side also, which also means I have to be out there and show my face in a quite literal sense also, that is super important for that.
And so that actually is a nice segue to what you're doing on social media. Tell me your social media strategy.
So the social media, shall I talk about LinkedIn or Instagram? Because I feel like those are a little bit different. LinkedIn, my strategy is, and that has also shifted. The problem, maybe to start with this, is the problem with social media is I don't think it's any more social. I feel like it's more algorithmic media because the things that get pushed out, I have no control over. It's not really the people that I engage with the most, but what the algorithm thinks. So I have to, especially on LinkedIn, provide way more entertaining content than inspirational content, actually, because the algorithm would punish me for just posting my deep dives there, because people want to see pictures. They want to see people who smile into the camera, or people who just look into the camera with a certain mood in their eyes and in their face, in their facial expression. So I always try, whenever I do a posting, to think about, okay, what's a picture of me that also would work with that? Because then the algorithm pushes it further. I tested a lot of things. I know, for example, that videos are a format that doesn't work for me on LinkedIn that much, whereas it's more really photos of me looking into the camera or being in action on a stage, being in a workshop, and then having some content that actually adds value more in the text of that posting. And on Instagram, I do a lot more videos. I try to have more short snippets of inspiration. It's a little bit more clickbaity, I would say, because that's also the language of the channel, what works there. And I try to have like 50% of my content video based, and 50% is like a carousel or a photo that adds some value. But I also have to say that Instagram, this is also one of the learnings of the past year. I just have one channel that is both my personal and my private channel. So whenever I go on vacation or whenever I do something fun in my private life, it's also up there. So when you sign up to my channel, you're up for everything that I do.
And that, you're saying that works, or would you do it differently or separate?
That works. And for me, that was a big learning. I in my second year also was where do I separate my work self and my private self? Because when I had my jobs previously, whenever I shut down my laptop, half an hour later, I'm off. I don't think about work that much. Now I think about work all the time because it's my business and I'm super involved in it and I like doing it. But what I learned is that I had to become one, that I'm just one person. Whenever I have a business conversation, I also bring in my private side. And whenever I have a private conversation with one of my friends, whenever I go on a date, for example, I'm also the entrepreneur always. And my Instagram really reflects that. And that's why I feel like it's good. And in terms of people coming back to me and reaching out to me, it works. It's surely not for everyone. If you just want the highly polished postings on Instagram, then my channel is probably not for you.
Beautiful. All right. I want to talk about your podcast. And then maybe to wrap up, we can give the listeners a question or two to be reflecting on for next year so that they can move in the direction that you have moved if they want to. But your podcast, one of the things I find super interesting about it is that your prospects are the guests. Like you're doing it for the prospects and the conversations with the guests, not for how many people will listen, right? What's the strategy there?
So the strategy there is, first, what you have to know is in my podcast, I focus very much on sustainability and how to communicate about it, because that's my passion. And what I want to provide is a stage for companies that do something good when it comes to sustainability and share their message there so that others can learn from it. And I always invite companies that I find fascinating, and people that I find fascinating. And in the end, my goal is to build a relationship with these people, same as always. And sometimes I just had this case that I interviewed a marketing leader 2 years ago on my podcast. We stayed in touch because we just had a great conversation, and we had a couple of virtual coffee chats afterwards. And then 2 years later, she asked me, "Hey, I'm working on this project. Would you be the right person to work with on this?" And then I said yes. And so I'll be traveling to this company in next week, actually. And I will meet them for a full day workshop.
Wow.
And I don't want this to sound like, okay, the grand plan is always to win my guests as clients, because sometimes you also realize during the conversation, okay, very interesting company, very interesting case, but on a personal level, we just don't vibe that much. And then sometimes you meet those people and you feel like, this is great. We could have gone on for hours talking. So let's just do this. And I never push anything with my guests, but in building a relationship, and I feel like, as I mentioned in the beginning, this relational part is so important in our business. Yeah. And for me, the podcast just is a way to open a door, and then we'll see where it takes us.
I love that. All right. Well, we could go on for hours, Florian. But we'll just have to do another episode.
Right.
And so, but since it is the end of one year, the beginning of another, let's give the listeners a question or two. Like one of the questions that's been most effective for you of your, what did you say, 40 questions in Norway?
Yeah.
What's the best question?
I feel like the best question, or one of the best questions that I like to ask myself, and I also use this question a lot in my workshops, is what do you want your audience to feel about you and your brand? Because I feel like we're so much in our heads and we think about stuff all the time, and we think about, okay, this is the message that I want to get across. This is the way I want to position myself. But in the end, us being emotional beings, I feel like it's so much more important to leave an impression in terms of a feeling. And I like to ask myself that all the time, what feeling I want to evoke with my whole marketing strategy, what feeling I want to evoke with a single Instagram posting, what feeling I want to evoke if I go to an event, and really always coming back to that one question. And sometimes even when I meet a person on the way to the meeting, I think, okay, so what's the intention of the feeling that I want them to leave this conversation with?
Mm-hmm.
Just thinking about that and coming up with just one feeling, not a lot of them, because then we get confused and we overwhelm the other person maybe. But just really this one thing, this one feeling, that's something that I would ask myself.
And so I'd have to ask you that question. What is the feeling that you want people to get from your brand?
Clarity.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like this is something that gets lost. There is so much information out there. I work with amazing people that really have their shit together and that have great strategies. But sometimes what gets lost along the way is the clarity to really understand what are we doing, why are we doing it, how are we doing it. And this is something that I want to give my clients.
And that actually begs one final question, which is, do you ever struggle with imposter syndrome?
I haven't yet met a really intelligent person who does not struggle with imposter syndrome. If I meet someone who doesn't have imposter syndrome, I usually get a bit cautious. So yes, I struggle with it. When I published my first trend report, as I told you before, I was like, okay, will anybody actually want to read my thoughts? It's 75 slides and it doesn't follow any structure that I've copied from somewhere, but it's just like thoughts that I came up with, findings that I found, examples of brands using all of these insights that I've identified. And yes, I struggle with it. And sometimes when I meet amazing people that want to hear me speak, invite me to their event, my first thing that I think about is, why are they inviting me? And then I give the talk, I do the project, and then afterwards they're like, "This was great, so much good work." And then I have to remind myself, and this is, I think, where the imposter syndrome slightly goes away. I think it will never go fully away, but where this voice just gets a little quieter.
Right. And the reason I asked it also is because I would think the listeners listening to our conversation would assume that you've done all these amazing things and you're achieving success rather quickly as a result. So I'm sure he doesn't, have that problem.
No, I do. I do. I feel
Good.
like it's just natural.
Mhm. Yeah, I think a lot of people do.
How about you, Elise? Do you struggle with imposter
Not
syndrome?
anymore. I mean, I used to for sure, but I was very kind of arrogant and cocky. And if it was a problem, I didn't pay attention to it. I was like, I don't care. I'm doing it anyway. So it didn't get in my way. And then I guess over the years, at a certain point, because when you get to be a certain age, you're like, who cares anyway?
Yeah.
Like, I don't care what those people think. And I've got so many options. And that's why I always say, like, marketing is the solution, because if
Mm,
you have many, many irons in the fire, then what one person thinks, or what if one client fires you, it doesn't matter. You know how to
yeah,
go get more. It's fine.
exactly. Yes.
So I don't know, but just hearing that isn't going to cure everyone of imposter syndrome. But I guess the hope, in a way, is that the more practice we get, the more mature we get, the older we get, whichever of those or whatever
Mm,
combination, the more we can relax. Because the problem with all of this psychological baggage is that it becomes an obstacle to doing what needs to be done. And that's
mm.
when you can't achieve success.
Yeah. When you get into this freeze mode
Yes.
or flight mode even,
Yeah.
and just yeah, that's how to actually bridge that gap, to just do it
Yep.
and learn on the way, and every negative feedback that you get is also just a data point that shows you, okay, this for this specific example did not work.
Exactly. Beautiful. All right. Well, that data point is the perfect place to put the bookmark. We will definitely continue this conversation, and I'm excited. I'll just reveal right now that you have agreed to be one of our coaches for the S&P Plus program in 2026. So more coming soon about that. Just a little cliffhanger.
And I'm
But
super excited to actually be part of this. Thank you for
yeah,
asking me.
of course. No, I think you'll be perfect for it. And but in the meantime, tell the people where they can find you online.
So you can find me on LinkedIn with my name that you are, I'm sure, will put into the description because my last name is Schleicher, which is rather difficult to pronounce. You can also go to future-strategies.com, which is my website, where you can also find my newsletter and all the work that I do and my podcasts, and just get a little bit of impression of how I approach what I do.
Beautiful. And I think you meant future hyphen strategies, right? Right. The minus, it's the same thing, but we don't really say it that way. So future
Then let's
hyphen.
use the hyphen. Yes.
Okay, just to make sure everyone understands. All right, Florian, thank you so much. And I will talk to you soon.
Let's do that. Thank you for having me.
Did you catch that cliffhanger at the end there? Florian will be one of our new coaches for the S&P Plus program in 2026. Giving you access to more expert coaches is just one of the many ways we're making the S&P Plus program even better, because this is the year you stop starting over, when you go from stop and go to steady flow. So if that resonates with you, just go to marketing-mentor.com and sign up for my quick tips, and you'll hear all about it very soon.